Welcome back to the Autoblog podcast. I'm Greg Migliore. Joining me on this cool early September day is Beltz Snyder, our senior editor for all things green. How are you, man?
I'm pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing awesome.
Love to hear it.
It's going to get a little hot soon, but hey, that's September. It's always kind of up and down and, jackets and hoodies and then shorts. But we have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about the 2022 Jeep Grand Cherokee L. This is the three-row version of the Grand Cherokee. I have been driving it all week. I haven't driven it super far, but I've been driving it super frequently. And I know you went to the launch, so we'll get into that. That'll be good. We're going to talk about the Volkswagen Tiguan, which if you're listening to this, probably over the weekend. Story went up on Thursday. Check it out. That's our first drive of the 2022 model. So come back to our site to check that out. And also, we're going to have a hypothetical segment where we suggest one car for an automaker. We're going to be like a prescription here. Like if you could add one car to any OEM's lineup, what would that car be and what would the automaker be? So give that a try, almost like a drinking game or something. I don't know. Then we're going to spend your money twice. Thanks to everybody who wrote in. We put up a post this week just to try to get some more comments, questions, engagements. Keep sending them in. You have Spend My Monies. That's podcast@autoblog.com. If you have some questions, we're always happy to do kind of like a mailbag or something too. Cars or, even non-car stuff. Hey, we'll see if we can solve your problems as they relate to like beer and, I don't know, other things. I'm not sure we can get too far afield in our expertise. So, yeah, let's jump right in. Grand Cherokee L. Excited to drive this. It's a big deal launch for Jeep. Let's put it that way. I think they took a look at this segment of SUV and said, hey, we don't have a three-row Grand Cherokee. We need to get one. Now, you don't have to get a Grand Cherokee with three rows, and the third row folds down in this one, obviously. But now they could truly fight like, the GMC Acadia, for example. Like, just all those three-row SUVs out there head-to-head. Like, if you want to get a larger three-row Jeep, hey, the Grand Wagoneer and the Wagoneer are a thing, but
those are huge,
and they're monster trucks. But now, if you're like a Grand Cherokee buyer, you can get a very large Grand Cherokee with three rows. So to me, it's like talk about vehicles that automakers should be adding to fill out their lineup. I mean, this is right, part and parcel what Jeep needed to do just to kind of stretch out their buyers a little bit. And frankly, now they have depending on how you count this, 2 or 3 three-row SUVs, whereas before, what was it? The Commander was the last three-row Jeep, at least sold domestically. So I think it's interesting play. I'll toss it back to you real quick, though. I mean, you did the first drive of this a few months back. I mean, how are you feeling about it?
I came into it with a little bit of skepticism, but I drove it. I drove it on the road and off-road. And I came away really impressed with, especially like the higher level trims. The materials in there are really, really nice. That Macintosh sound system's pretty cool. Yeah, it's nice and spacious. I was a little worried. We took it to the Chelsea Proving Grounds and did some of the off-road trails that they evaluate Wranglers on, and I definitely thought I was gonna get stuck on the breakover angle on this thing just because it's so long. But depending on the trim you get, you can get that air suspension that raises up quite a bit, and I was able to get right over stuff. I was actually quite impressed with how well this handled off-road. And then I didn't drive it for this part. One of the engineers was driving, but they have those sort of offset moguls. So you're driving over and rocking back and forth, 3 wheels, pretty much you go from 3 wheels to 2 wheels as you're transitioning, and then you land down on one of the front wheels, then back wheels in the air. And it was really impressive, and it handled it, confidently and calmly, and I was pretty comfortable the whole time. Yeah, it went through some pretty hairy stuff, but then on the road, it was pretty good too. Super comfortable. Got a little bit of that truck-like, off-roading bounciness to it, but it's not harsh. It's not, too truck-like. It feels like a Jeep. It feels like a real Jeep, which was my main concern. Is this still going to feel like a real Jeep? And it certainly does.
That it's interesting. To me, this feels like a real Jeep Grand Cherokee is how I would put it, which is a very capable off-road vehicle if you want it to be. Most people, I don't think, do.
Yeah.
To me, and the one I drove that I've been driving this week is the Summit Reserve. So you're talking like 64 grand. It's nice.
That's very line topper, and yeah, it's real nice inside. That quilted leather.
Oh man,
and they've got some neat colors. They've got some really nice wood in there. That's a beautiful interior. And I actually crawled back into the third row and sat back there for a while, and it's pretty comfortable. You can move the second row captain's chairs forward and back, so you can give yourself more room if you need. If it was two adults back there, you'd be sitting shoulder to shoulder, but you'd have plenty of headroom and legroom. And there's cup holders and USB ports back there. And then if you sit back there and you look out the little windows, the little black tinting around the edges, you see there's some Easter eggs. There's the silhouette of a Wrangler on one, and a silhouette of a Grand Cherokee and Grand Cherokee L on the other. So it's like a little treat for the people who get relegated to the back seat. They get to discover something like that.
I think, when I look at the Grand Cherokee L, it does start to tread into like, I'd say premium, family hauling SUV at this point, especially the one that I'm driving. And it's got some things that I think work really well as far as, obviously making it like, to me for 64 grand, it is a luxury SUV. Obviously the finishings, the quilting looks great. But also it's got some things that like, frankly, for like family duty, make it easier, like the second row captain's chairs can slide forward and push forward. So like my little guy got into the third row and I pulled the chair out and was like, hey man, you got to go to school. I don't want to crawl back there. I'm just going to pull this chair out. And he easily walked out. For mom and dad in the front row, there's the comfort settings where you could call up a couple of different massages, which I have long advocated for the massage sort of option to just be proliferated across the industry. You want to get one in your Ford EcoSport? Sure, why not? Of course, they'll never do that. Right. But it's like, I think it's a great feature. And like driving home from like drop off, give myself like a massage, turn the seat heaters up. It was about 60 degrees. I'm like, hey, this is a family car I could get on board with. And like, we've been like looking at minivans, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I know I'm in the basically the most expensive Grand Cherokee L, but drop down a few trims, get something that's a little more budget conscious. And it's like, hey, wait a minute, I could see myself in here. It seems like a very legit, like I'd say Palisade fighter, which I think is a good option against like a traditional minivan, So, kind of looking at it from the parenting side of things.
Yeah, and you said you don't think a lot of people will take it off road. You know what? You'd be surprised. When I had my Jeep, I had a Cherokee, a 99 Cherokee, and took it to a Jeep Jamboree, took it to some, off-roading spots in Wisconsin. Most of the cars out there were Grand Cherokees. They were new. Wow. There was a lot of new owners. It's their first Jeep. And they're in the Grand Cherokee, and they just want to see what it can do. They want to see what it's capable of, and and of course, once you do that once, you're hooked. But yeah, I think a lot of Jeep owners, especially if you're going to the Jeep brand, might be more inclined to see what your car can do off road, and once you do it, you're gonna keep doing it. Hopefully. As long as you don't break something. But but yeah, I think this is to be a good car for a family, especially if you can only have like one vehicle in the household. You only have room to park one car, let's say, but you have the money to get a nice Grand Cherokee, and you want to do everything. You want to drop the kids off at school. You want to take it off road. You want to go camping. You want to do stuff like that. It's a good all around vehicle for all those things, and it's comfortable on the highway. Pretty good driving assist technology, and all around it's a pretty good. It sort of does it all, which I kind of like about it.
I didn't mess with the settings, but my son actually, when he was crawling around the front seat, adjusted the ride height. So I was actually rolling down like just random suburban road at like the highest like rock crawling setting, and it was flashing the messages like, to maintain this ride height, please slow down. And I'm like, I'm like Rubiconing here on like, in suburbia. But, I would agree with you that especially with Jeep, there is like a sense of a state of mind, and I think when I was, looking at the Bronco, I was even thinking to myself, like, it's just like, the Bronco can go head to head with the Wrangler and is better in some ways, actually. But Jeep owners are always going to be a Jeep owner. You could always say you own a Jeep. A Bronco, for good or bad, is a Ford, and that's a different, like, it's just different. Let me put it that way. Like, nothing is a Jeep. If you buy a Jeep, whether you get a Cherokee, a Grand Cherokee, a Wrangler, a Grand Wagoneer, you're driving a Jeep. And for some people, that's very, very cool. And I do think that comes through in the Grand Cherokee L, if you will. I think it looks pretty good too. Like, it really has a presence. Like, pulling up different places. Grand Cherokees are very ubiquitous in Metro Detroit. Like, you see them everywhere. But the new one, it's like, well, wait a minute. What do you got there? The grill is kind of like, canted forward. It's got a really long hood. I think it looks great in person. Pictures, I don't think did it justice, but you really have some presence, especially in the higher trims when you roll up in one of these things.
Yeah, I agree with you. And yes, that grill is definitely eye-catching. I've been with people who aren't car people, and once or twice I've seen one of these roll by, and they're like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Oh, that's the Grand Cherokee L." They're like, "What's the Grand Cherokee L?"
Yeah.
So I explained to them, but especially it's the grill that's the first thing that people notice, because it's different. It's not quite what we're used to. Eventually, we'll get used to it, but for now, it's a really fresh looking appearance, and it really makes its presence known.
I think too, it gives a fresh take on Jeep SUV design. Like, I could see some of the other, like the Cherokee and just other, maybe even the Compass, starting to kind of affect this look a little bit, which I think could be good. Jeep design by necessity is generally pretty static. But I mean, to me, the look here is strong. I actually think somewhat of a similar vibe on the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer. Like, I think the Grand Cherokee looks better. It's just, to me, it's like very much like the right proportions. Whereas I think when you start to look at Wagoneer, it gets a little more hulking, if you will. But that's okay too. I mean, if you're going to buy that, you're already cross-shopping Tahoe and Suburban and Navigator, maybe. I don't know. You're really in like kind of a different space even, So, it's interesting.
I haven't seen one of those in person yet, but in photos and, candid photos, it looks even bigger than it does in, stage press shots. But I'm going to withhold my take on what I think of how it looks, other than it looks huge, until I see one in person.
Yeah. One of my neighbors has one that's like some sort of prototype, it looks like, and it's big. And I believe it's just the regular Wagoneer. It's a big SUV, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it's a cool name. I think they did they're Jeep. They've got this great name, and they put it on credible thing that people like would be like, oh, hey, you have the Wagoneer. That's cool. I mean, a lot of people I've talked to, and to me, Jeep is like a really good like crossover brand. It just, nobody even cares that they're owned by Stellantis, West Coast, East Coast, flyover country,
right?
Canada. Everybody knows what a Jeep is. The Wagoneer, I think, has a lot of like cachet with almost like, and with everybody, so it's, I really think they're doing a good job of like kind of manifesting who they are across their lineup. So it's a nice car.
Yeah. It brings back memories. Some of my first car memories, my dad had a Wagoneer when I was very, very young, up until we moved to Oregon when I was 4 years old. And I remember going on Sunday drives in that thing.
Yeah.
I think they should offer it with wood on the side, though.
I think that's inevitable. I mean, will Jeep do it? Maybe, maybe not. But somebody's going to.
Aftermarket.
Other Greg Cherokee L thoughts. Anything you took away from that first drive? I know it's been a few months actually, but I mean, I think it's going to be pretty competitive based on the execution. But
my other memory of that from getting into the back was stepping up into the second row from outside. It was a big step up, so it's a little hard. I think if I were a few years older, I could see getting into the back seat. Even the second row, sort of a no-go for me. But once you're up there, it's really easy to navigate your way into the third row, which was nice. But those second row seats are awesome. You've got tons of space. They're very comfortable. And you're just surrounded by really nice materials. I liked it quite a bit.
I think they're doing a really good job of taking the Grand Cherokee L and taking it to like an even higher space. And you could get a pretty loaded Grand Cherokee like right now. But I mean, they're like really making this, if you want it to be, a true luxury vehicle. So I think that's smart.
It definitely feels like a luxury vehicle. 100%.
So I've been very impressed overall, though, with the Grand Cherokee L. I think it's definitely the right move for Jeep. It looks great, drives pretty good. It definitely drives large. It's a big vehicle. I've definitely been doing like sort of the family stuff this week with a car seat in there. Love the bucket seats for the second row. Third row is pretty good. I actually look forward to climbing back there and just kind of really getting a feel for it. You're a little bit of a taller guy than I am, so the fact that you could fit back there and feel reasonably comfortable, I think, is a good sign for them. And the seats in the rear hatch are obviously, this is nothing special, but you can control it all different ways, like with a key fob, with every button, can do things. You could even like put the third row headrests down with a push of a button in like through the infotainment, which I think is kind of neat. So, I'm looking forward to my waterfall massage and rock climbing massage. There's like 3 different extension massages. I don't even know which one I'm going to pick, but there's 3 of them. So, looking forward to those on the way, in my future drives.
Yeah. Those third row headrest buttons are second or third, it doesn't matter what row. Those are my favorite. If I've got someone back there, I like to press it so it clunks down on their head. Always, they never know what's going on.
Oh, geez. It's definitely fun to create a just as a diversion. Like when I was with my son in the car and he was like starting to get into things, I'm like, the third row headsets go or headrests go down. He's like, wait, what's that? So that was kind of cool. So check out John's review, Jeep Grand Cherokee L. I'm excited to drive it. It's actually on the long list of North American Car and Truck of the Year awards, which is one of the reasons it's in my driveway. So I've been driving a lot of those vehicles that are on the long list because I get to be a juror this year. So I'm super excited about that.
That's awesome.
And trying to figure out, how I'm going to put on my voting. So, good times.
Good times indeed.
Volkswagen Tiguan. Was it good times?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
So for 2022, it gets a mid-cycle refresh. They updated the front and rear look a little bit, classed it up a little bit. It looks nicer. Then they added some new tech. They get now they all have the digital cockpit, the digital instrument cluster. Still the same powertrain, the turbo 2-liter, still available in front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive. They condensed the trim lineup a little bit. They raised the prices on the 3 lower trims, but dropped the price on the top trim. And added more stuff to all these. So there's some new tech. There's better driver assistance. But yeah, it's and it's crazy to me that they're able to stuff a third row into those. They're only in the front wheel drive versions now, but yeah, there's a third row in those, and it's so small. I can't imagine it ever being used. But it drives well. They didn't do any changes to the suspension or anything. They did a little bit of tuning to the engine. Mostly, they got one more MPG out of it, sort of across the board. But yeah, I drove the very top trim level in all-wheel drive, and I drove the very bottom trim level in front-wheel drive. I started in the all-wheel drive, and it's really nice. Nice materials. None of that clutter that you get in like American vehicles, like Volkswagen, Audi. I feel like they're very good at maintaining sort of a neat and tidy interior, and nothing's too over the top. I was a little concerned because they mentioned that they added some touch controls, some sliders for. In this case, thankfully, it was only for the climate control. But I don't know if you recall the all the touch sensitive sliders in the Volkswagen ID4 and how fidgety and tough to use those were, tough to figure out. And basically everything in the ID4 was touch capacitive like that. It's just the two sliders for the climate control, and it works pretty well. And then in the higher trim, there's also touch sensitive buttons on the steering wheel, and there's a little bit of haptic feedback. It'll give a little tap back, so it actually feels like you're pressing a button. And so that was pretty normal. The lower trims are still very very sparse. Doesn't get any of that. Normal buttons on the steering wheel, and then those little dials that just don't have temperature in degrees. It just has red or blue for the climate control, so you're kind of guessing and fidgeting with it until you find what's right. But yeah, I thought it was it drives pretty well. It's pretty confident on the roads, pretty good. I took it down some of the twisty roads out by Dexter, Chelsea, Hell, Michigan, which there's this one road called Hankard Road, giving away my secret spot. But for anyone who's around here, they already know of it. And yeah, it's really well sorted out. The steering is a little on the artificial light side, and then sort of numb on center, but it's precise enough. The powertrain feels ample. There's some hesitation to get the power to the wheels in the all-wheel drive version. It like waits a second before it scoots away, and then the front-wheel drive version, it seems to get the power to the wheels more immediately. But I don't know whether it was just because it was only going to the front wheels, or because of the cheaper tires on the S trim. They'd spin really easily, and so it would take about the same time to launch in either vehicle. And the 8-speed automatic transmission works pretty well in that. It's pretty smooth, pretty quick to respond. There's no paddles to shift with, but you can use the gear lever to shift up and down in a manual mode. But it drives me nuts. I wish that cars that had manual modes on the gear lever, I feel like pulling back should be upshifting and pushing forward should be downshifting. Because when you're accelerating, you're getting pushed back in your seat. Your instinct is to pull back, but this is the opposite. And so I kept upshifting when I meant to downshift, and downshifting when I meant to upshift. I imagine you'd get used to it after a while, but the transmission works well on its own anyway. So there it is.
Cool.
But
it's interesting. Go ahead.
But the thing is, I just drove the ID4 a couple weeks ago. Apart from the fidgety tech, I'd much rather drive that. It's about the same size. It handles really, really well. And I just drove the Taos, which is the size that the Tiguan used to be. If you take out the extra space for the third row, and you basically got the Taos. And that thing is a delight to drive. It's really fun. And at least in all-wheel drive, Zach was telling me it's not quite as well sorted out in front-wheel drive. And the Taos is amazingly efficient with its interior space. Putting a car seat in there was a breeze, and then there's a huge space behind the rear seats for cargo, and it's less expensive. I would much rather pick that than have the few extra inches of the Tiguan. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, because that's the ID4 and Taos are both new vehicles. The Tiguan is Volkswagen's best seller, both in the U.S. and globally, which kind of surprised me. We'll see if more people opt for one of those other choices. But either way, the choices are there. You can go into a Volkswagen dealership and sort of pick exactly what you want in all in the same, basically compact crossover segment.
It's the one thing that stuck out with me, of all the things you said about the Tiguan, is the steering, because that's something I always have noticed in the years that I have driven them, is they do have that kind of like, generally like almost like a very light feel, kind of artificial. Sometimes it feels like you can actually feel over boosted. But for me, that was one of the things that have always struck me. Important vehicle for Volkswagen. It's definitely a part of the segment that really, could touch a lot of different consumers. And I think it also is one of those things where, for Volkswagen to do what it wants to do in the US, they need to get volume, and the Tiguan can certainly provide that. So, we'll see. I mean, I bet you see a lot of Volkswagens out, college town like Ann Arbor out by your way. At least sometimes. Sure. So, different like, parts of Metro Detroit. People don't remember Volkswagen was actually based here for like 30 years. Their headquarters was in Michigan. So you actually see a fair amount of them on the road. It's interesting. You're talking about the Tiguan, but I do think the last Volkswagen I drove was the ID4. That's kind of wild that like you're talking about a very traditional, like just everyday crossover. And then the last Volkswagen I drove was their car of the future that's here
Yeah.
now.
And I really enjoyed the ID4. And another plug for it, over the Tiguan, it handles great. The steering in the ID4 was fantastic. It doesn't suffer from the same problems as it's very dependent on model in Volkswagen. The Golfs always had decent steering, but yeah, the Tiguan and the Taos, the steering's also a little numb and weird, but the ID4, just fantastic steering, and it was super responsive. I did the basically what would be like a squirrel test, There was something in the road that was sharp and pointy looking that I didn't see until I was up on it, and I just flipped right around it, and it maneuvered perfectly. I was driving this at the same time as the Mustang Mach-E, and that's a little sluggish to point its bow. We talked about this the last time I was on, but yeah, I mean, the cargo space in the ID4 is just basically the same as the Tiguan. I like the ID4.
Yeah, I think I've been seeing a lot of commercials for the ID4. That doesn't necessarily mean anything other than maybe they're spending their marketing money. But the car's really growing on me, and I liked it a good deal when I did drive it. I didn't like it as much as the Mach-E because some of the things like the infotainment was a little screwy, and but I mean, I don't know.
There's sort of two interfaces that I've used in these last few Volkswagens, and the ID4 is like sort of that sideways, almost like a tablet with the little home button, whereas in the Taos and the Tiguan, it's more traditional, what we're used to, sort of tiles. And one of the updates with the Tiguan is it gets the new software firmware behind it, that it better recognizes voice controls. It has better touch capacity, so you can do swipes to get from one screen to another, and you can even do like pinch to zoom on it now. So that was cool. The infotainment in the Tiguan was very easy to use, mercifully.
Yeah, cool. Any final thoughts on the Tiguan?
It has some neat lighting on it.
Okay, all right. That's not where I thought you were going to go, but all right.
One of the updates they did, they put the updated Volkswagen badge on it, and on the front, across the grille, on one of the little horizontal slats at least on the SEL trim, it's illuminated, and it looks pretty cool. One of the Volkswagen spokespeople, the product specialist, actually used the words "lighting is the new chrome," which which is kind of right on the money for the industry right now. That's the truth.
Lighting. I like a little bit of chrome, but give me lighting all day.
Yes.
Especially go back to the ID4 and some of those Mercedes badges. Mm-hmm. I mean, you see lighting is like a style play in a lot of different cars too. Mm-hmm. Whether it's like, DRLs or like just like, like the pooling light when you open a car. I love it. Give it. Yeah. I think it's great.
And, we as automotive journalists, maybe not you and I personally, but a lot of us, I could somewhat understand the sentiment, made fun of illuminated badges, but I always thought they were neat. They're a stupid party trick, but I think they're cool.
I love driving down the street in the winter. Like, it's like literally that ad they do in December where like Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer is like driving like the SLs with the lit up grills. I want that to be me. Like if I were going to buy a Benz and that was one of the options, and it's pretty widely available, 100% check.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
nothing like rolling down a snow-covered street with that three-pointed star lit up. And
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's awesome, I think.
Yeah, that's like the modern interpretation of having the the hood ornament, that 3-pointed star hood ornament when it actually stuck up off the top of the hood.
Yeah,
I loved that so much.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and the funny thing too is I feel like I'd be curious. That's actually an interesting story. Is what happened to all the hood ornaments? I mean, it's such a like old school. I mean, so old school, like 1920s old school. But I mean, they've been around a long time, and it seems like they've really gone the way of, you know, the starter crank or something. And
yeah, I remember. I think the E-Class wagon was like the last holdout for that that hood ornament, from what I recall. But that I don't think it offers that anymore.
I always liked the leaping Jaguar. I thought that was another good one. Can you
Yeah, that's
imagine
cool.
the leaper lit up? Now that's a hood ornament
Oh
right there.
man, give it some red eyes.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be cool.
Wow, that suddenly now so that's the hood ornament. If Cerberus was still in the car business, you do that, put that on the car, and suddenly people are like, "Oh, hey, I want to drive a Cerberus," except it's a Chrysler, and that was a 3-headed dog from hell, not a one dog with lit up eyes or cat. But so we've went from Tiguan to lit up hood ornaments of dogs. We went from Grand Cherokee to Wagoneer. So I feel like this is going to be kind of a slimmed down podcast, but we're just adding all these different cars. So that's great.
Yeah.
So let's continue to go off on a tangent. And I kind of made up this segment here where it was like, hey, you can pick one thing to add to an automaker's lineup. Like everybody always would say things like Cadillac needs something to better fight the Lincoln Navigator or something, or something that slots below the Escalade, like a mid-size body-on-frame SUV sort of thing. So that's one example. Or like, the Barracuda should come back. Or, for a long time we said Tesla should do a truck, and then they sort of are. So yeah, I mean, just like, one car wish list that you think would make somebody's brand better. I'll toss it over to you and we can bat this back and forth, but what do you think?
Well, do you remember the Nissan Quest?
I do.
I liked that. And Nissan has one thing they do very well is electric vehicles. I think Nissan should make an electric minivan. Not like the NV, not like that, but they could use the sort of the same underpinning, some of the things they've learned from the ENV, but make like bring back the Quest nameplate even, and make it look cool. And yeah, I would if Nissan did that, I'd be like, Nissan's back, baby. I know it's kind of cheesy, but I think that would be a good move, a fun move, and it'd be a car I would actually consider owning.
That's really interesting. I almost went with like a couple of Nissans. I thought of some different trucks I would drop in, but what I think I'm going to go with is I'm going to throw it over to Tesla, which is kind of like, I don't know, an obvious one to do. I think they should do a very conventional kind of like, maybe not body on frame, but like truck like crossover, something that could be almost like a Navigator or something. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that could be cool. If they want to make it crazy styled up like the Cybertruck, I wouldn't do that, but might work for them. So I actually think like the model, I'm blanking, the Model X, of course, is very Tesla-like. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying stray too far from the Tesla formula. Maybe the front end is like kind of that Tesla, like kind of mouse look, but then just get like more of a crossover in there that's a little bit more traditional, something that like you might lure like, like I said, like a Navigator buyer or like a GLE buyer or something like that, and make it a little trucky, like it doesn't have to be like a sport activity coupe or something, which I actually think like an X6 fighter, a real X6 fighter could really help Tesla out. But that would be a prescription I would have. And then the other one, which this is like a half measure, we've been reading the Roadster is delayed again.
Yeah.
I think it would really help them to get the Roadster back out. So,
yeah.
My first answer is like, I'm inventing a vehicle, which is the genesis of this. But my second part is get the Roadster here, man. I think that would really help them. It'd be a good conversational point for them.
What if Tesla made its own fighter for the Wrangler? Something that, you could pop the doors off. They could probably find some clever way to have it do stuff like that and make it an off-roader. They could sort of give it a brand new take and people would gobble it up for sure. But I think Tesla's got a lot on its plate already, but that would be cool.
I think it's funny you said the off-roader. I almost went with a GMC off-roader, kind of like bring a Jimmy back or something.
Yeah.
Which, hey, I guess since we're, playing handball here, back and forth, I actually think that would be a good one for them too. GMC has a lot of, like nobody's going to question a GMC off-roader, so that makes some sense. While we're with GMC, what if they did like a Santa Cruz fighter, like something like Hyundai, it's this crossover like thing. Might have some credibility, sort of the way Ford. Nobody is going to like haul a hill away or scale a mountain in a Maverick, but it's got that blue oval badge on it, so it's got that built-in credibility. I feel like GMC could take some risks, and nobody's going to get super bent out of shape if they swing and miss. So that could be one that might be interesting too.
Yeah, it's like I feel like it's a lower stakes thing for GMC's reputation than it would be for like Chevy,
Yeah. So it's funny you should say that. I actually slightly disagree with you there. I can see, because of like an El Camino, like if they did really make it almost like a sedan alternative, then maybe a Chevy, El Camino like vehicle could actually carry the water. Although I'm blanking. There was a GMC kind of like El Camino variant, wasn't there?
I don't remember.
Let's see.
I remember my buddy had a Dodge Rampage for a while until it got totaled in the middle of the night.
Okay, so this is super random. It was called the Caballero, it looks like, from 78 through 87. And I'm pretty sure I had to, this is really going into the weeds, I did a writing test when I was interviewing at Auto Week, like over years ago. And one of the things I had to write about was this GMC concept that was like a riff on the Caballero, however you say it. So, God, I totally forgot about that vehicle, both the concept, remember the writing test, but I forgot this GMC existed. And cool name, cool vehicle, kind of like it. It's clearly just a rebadged like El Camino, but
Yeah. The other thing I thought of before I landed on the electric Nissan minivan was do a plug-in hybrid Subaru WRX and have the plug-in hybrid part of it be performance focused like it is in like the Lincoln Aviator. Don't make it an efficiency play, make it an output play. And ideally I would love to drive an all-electric WRX. I just don't think batteries are where they need to be for it to be able to fill that up. You could, if you want to make it a little longer, do an electric Lavorg and bring it to the US. You'd have to probably raise the floor a little bit, but you could get some batteries under there. Something like that. Or if Subaru could make its own answer to the Polestar 2.
That's an interesting one too. Okay.
Yeah. Just some thoughts.
Here's another thought. I think Dodge should bust out a Barracuda. We've been hearing that name keeps kind of going back and forth. I think they should use that name on something. Ideally, like an electric muscle car. Yeah, Plymouth's been going a long time. I think you could repurpose Barracuda as a Dodge. I mean, it fits in with how Dodges, which are usually named after like like weapons or wild animals or explosions. Like Barracuda sounds like the name of a Dodge. I think you could pass off credibly.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
I'd almost be surprised if they don't do that at some point.
I feel like as long as Ralph Gilles is around, the Barracuda always could be there, which, you know, Ralph Gilles is obviously the head of design for Stellantis and awesome car guy. If you ever, you know, come across him at an event, really brings the enthusiast passion to, you know, the Stellantis designs. But yeah, so I don't know. We're really kind of shooting the moon here. Any other random wish list cars or trucks here?
No, I think we should field this one to the rest of the team and make it an article, or, you know, revisit it in later podcasts.
Yeah,
because I'm sure I would love to hear what the rest of the guys you know would come up with.
Yeah, I think
it'd be some good stuff.
I will use this opportunity to refer this out to our prescription for the Chevy Camaro. We did a piece this week. It's, you know, you're listening to this on the weekend. Maybe you're getting a nice fall cookout on your patio before the leaves fall. That's a great thing. Check out a story. It's got a staff byline on it. We say what's wrong with the Chevy Camaro. We try to give it some tough love. Like we're doing here, we're just throwing out ideas. Only, frankly, this article is a little more like researched and specific about how, hey, you could make, or Chevy could make this car a little more competitive. They could sell more of them. They could tighten things up. You know, I check it out. I think it's a good read. I've always liked the Camaro, but it's interesting how doing so many things well, but also being very precise. In some ways, it's succeeded at its mission, but not really achieved anything. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think it drives great and looks great, but there's enough shortcomings that people end up going with, I'll take the rawness of the Mustang, or I like the Mustang, or I'll take the Challenger because it's a two-door sedan is what it is, you know?
Yeah, I didn't contribute because I would have said the exact same thing as Zach Palmer. Is just the visibility is really my one nag for the Camaro. It's hard to drive. It's hard to see the corners of it. Hard to see around you. Keep your situational awareness. But Jeremy, I think it was Jeremy, had a really good point that maybe the Camaro is doing exactly what it's meant to do. It's not supposed to be some huge breakout hit. It's you know, the people who want it, they want it for how it drives and how it looks, and they like those things. And you know, it's good on a track. So I think his book, it was really neat to read everyone's different points of view on it.
Cool. So check that article out. Good thing to read over. Like I said, you know, your morning coffee on a weekend, maybe a little bit more time, or read it right now. That's even better too. So let's spend some money.
Yeah.
We have 2 questions today. I'm pretty excited about this. First of all, thank you to all of you who have written. Send more Spend My Monies. I mean, maybe if we keep this pace up, we'll just do a full show of Spend My Monies. I mean, this is great.
Yeah.
We've got some of them. We're going to try to churn these out too. You want to throw like a mailbag question at us on like a topic or a car or a problem, please do. There's a lot going on in the car world. Podcast at autoblog.com. Luke in Alberta writes, I recently moved an hour away from the city where my company is based to a small town with really bad roads. Can work from home, so can we all, but need to attend meetings and visit clients on a regular basis. So I need something for commuting. Currently drive a 2015 Focus ST, and with the additional highway drive, central Alberta winter, and the traffic in the city once I reach the outskirts, it's becoming a bit of a tedious haul. Not enjoyable. So he's going to sell the Focus ST and have about $30,000 to $33,000 Canadian to spend on a new-to-me vehicle. He likes the Genesis G70, but they're a little bit small inside the back seat. That's true. Glued-on infotainment screen bothers his wife. They've taken the G80 Sport for a test drive, and they really like it. And let's see, the engine suspension, heads-up display, heated ventilated seats, all-wheel drive, adaptive cruise control, check all my boxes. This is some really good research. Luke, I think you have done most of the work for us. Question, however, is what else should I be considering when looking at or comparing to the G80 Sport? Whew, that was a long one. That was a good one. Thanks for writing, Luke. Over to you there, John.
Let's see. If this was, if he says he likes the Genesis G70 and the G80, if this was a different car that he was, saying like, oh, I like the so-and-so, I would say you should check out the Genesis G80. So I feel like a lot of people, and I mean, that's not why you write in to spend my money, but a lot of people, when they ask for your advice on cars, a lot of times it's just to get confirmation of that the car that they want is a good choice. And in this case, I would agree with that. But to give you some other options to look at, last generation Acura TLX, that checks the boxes, and it's also interesting, and not a lot of them out there. Subaru Legacy, good in the snow, really great in the snow. You can get it with eyesight. You could get that. Maybe you could, depending on how you optioned it, you could get it new within that price range and have, a warranty. So those are my first two thoughts. But I really like the G80 as a pick. Honestly, the G70 is awesome. It's so much fun. I do agree that back seat is really small. And it is a problem if you have to put people back there a lot, especially if you have adults who are going to sit back there, maybe they're clients, or if you have kids and you're going to put a car seat behind you, you're not going to have much room to drive. The G80 is a good choice. But yeah, go ahead.
I would say I like the G80. I'm going to throw another Genesis at you, Luke. I think the GV70, which I just drove in the last couple of weeks, you get more into like the crossover style of vehicle. It's a new car, so I'm not sure if it would quite fit into the budget. Again, it's a crossover, but when I drove it, it felt to me like frankly, everything like a Volvo wagon should be, even though it was slightly off the ground, to me, it drove very much almost like a wagon. It looks like a wagon, very attractive crossover. I drove the one with the powerful V6, beautiful interior. Genesises are great values. You get a lot of stuff on them, so that's good. The other one I'd throw out is take a look at like an Audi A6 all-road. You get all-wheel drive. Sounds like that's a priority up there. Michigan's cold. I can only imagine how rough Alberta must be in the winter. So you want something that's comfortable. I feel like an all-road could really, give you a nice experience. Audi would be nice to, spend some time in there on the way to pick up clients or go to the, whether it's the Calgary Flames or the Edmonton Oilers game or the Stampeders.
Yeah, if I were going to go with Audi, I'd definitely do, if there's bad roads, I'd definitely do the all road. And the bad roads are what made me think of the Legacy, because it soaks that stuff up pretty darn well. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I like those.
Good. All right. Well, let us know which way you end up, Luke. Ben in Oregon writes, while we wait for the coming avalanche of EVs in the next few years, I got to thinking about, should I buy one last enthusiast ICE car or just wait for the perfect EV? So if you had a reasonable amount to spend, let's say around $50K, what ICE car would you want as your final car, new or used? Looking for a combination of value, speed, looks, and fun factor. He's a big fan of sports sedans. Hey, me too. I don't want something you'd see every day, i.e. a Mustang, Camaro, or Charger. Considerations: used Lexus ISF, Chevy SS, Mercedes C63, the F10 Gen M5, that's a good one, Audi S4, S5, Sportback M340i, ATS-V, Giulia Quadrifoglio. Other things, those were used, by the way. This is new, 2022 Genesis G70. See a theme popping up here. I think that's actually, side note, the fact that Genesis cars are really showing up on like enthusiast radars, to me, that means they're doing something right here. If you're like listening to the podcast and writing into us about Genesis cars, I think that's a good thing. TLX Type S, Snyder would say TLX, but don't Type S it. Nissan Z, the new one does look good. For reference, he owns a 2014 CX-9 and a 2020 Ioniq plug-in. So not a lot of excitement going on. He's already partially into the future. This is a fun hypothetical. 50 grand, your final ICE car. It's tough. It almost feels like it's, like your last meal, it's a little ominous here. But yeah, I don't know. Your turn. What do you think?
He says he's tempted by the Z, and even though it's a 2-door, I think, gosh, that'd be such a cool one to have, especially if you're going to keep it around. I feel like it could be all the Z cars have history and personality, and there's a whole story behind the nameplate, and it's just, I really like that. That would very well maybe be what I would choose personally. Although I also really like the Lexus ISF. It's different, but it is it's really fun. And if you're gonna do your last internal combustion car, why not go with a V8, right?
That is definitely a fair point. If you're going to go out, I mean, you might as well go out with a V8, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I really see your point there. I'm a little all over the place here. I feel like if you're going to go with like your final, like, internal combustion car, you might as well go with like a car, like I almost would maybe steer towards a Mustang or a Camaro or something, just because, I mean, this is it. You might as well get a sports coupe, So maybe see if you get like a lightly used. I don't know if you get a GT350 for under 50, but I mean, what is more red and meat potato car than like a Shelby Mustang GT350? If it's the last non-EV you're ever going to drive, that might be my call. If you could get that somehow in the budget, a lightly used M5, real car, I could see that. Anybody who wants to buy a Chevy SS, I'm never going to tell you not to. If you listen to the podcast, I like the Chevy SS. I'll give you my standard disclaimer. The interiors are basically crap. And even the outside is a little, it's pretty dated and it's not going to really stand out. But for what it is, a rear-wheel drive Chevy sedan with a V8, a Corvette V8, heck yeah. If that's the car you like, you go out and get it, in my opinion. I think that's great. So my answer would probably be about as much of a V8 powered Mustang as you could buy. And I would say this answer could probably change by the minute, just because, there's a lot of different things you might want to do. You might say, hey, this is my last electric or my last internal combustion car. Everything else is electric. I'm going to go classic. I'm going to restore like an old Chevelle or something. Mm-hmm. Or maybe your last, V8 or internal combustion car, you want that to be like an off-roader. Electrification is going to do great things for Jeep and probably Bronco and all sorts of off-roading applications. But maybe you want that, like go find a 4-liter Cherokee or something, or Wrangler, and, ride off into the internal combustion sunset with that. So I don't know. Any other thoughts there, John?
If you hadn't, said don't want something you'd see every day like a Mustang, Camaro, or Charger, my first thought would have been Challenger Scatback.
Yeah. 392 Challenger Charger. That is the V8 to, drive to the vanishing point in, Yeah. It's a good one.
That would stay cool for a really long time.
Yeah, that would. Sound good too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we could leave it there. we're going to have to do a fall beer podcast soon, John. Now with it getting a little cool, it's dawning on me that needs to hit the fall calendar. I'm still drinking my final summer beers. I have a canned margarita that's actually quite good, but I need to drink that because it's going to be hot this week. So I've got like another couple weeks here to kind of clean out the summer fridge. Got a couple of like shandies, things like that. But then, you really got to turn to, I bought a 6-pack of Sam Adams Oktoberfest. And to me, that's a pretty good fall beer that, once it gets to be below 60 consistently, a little bit of a coolness in the air, that's a good one. So yeah, we'll have to do that.
Yeah, I've really been enjoying these. There's this local brewery that's fairly new here in Ann Arbor called Mothfire, and they've got some really good fruity sours and stuff.
Nice.
That have been great for the summer. So I'm gonna have to start, looking through their offerings and maybe pick something from them for a good fall beer.
Sounds good. We will report back in a few weeks. October is usually a good time to get going with the fall beer one.
Yes.
Not only for podcasts, but for drinking these fall beers. So we'll leave it there. Be safe out there. Don't drink and drive, obviously. Send us your Spend My Monies at podcast@autoblog.com. We'll see you next week.